Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tom Munns. I'm the executive director for Idaho Ripple Effect, but I haven't been here long. Um, this is a new venture that I'm trying out, and I'm hoping that it's going to work and catch fire. And I was thinking about the liberty movement for the last 20 years or so, and it seems like many of us are just easily forgotten. And one of the things I wanted to do was to pay a tribute to those that have sacrificed their time and their money and whatever else they happen to sacrifice for the sake of liberty in the state of Idaho. And I could really think of nobody better to start with than Russ Smerz. Russ, thanks for joining me tonight.
Hello, Tom. Great to be here.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And you are going to be the first video in the tribute section because I think the reason for that is because you were one of the ones that have been active for an extremely long time. I think it's been a long time, and I wanted to be able to discuss what it was like then, starting off with how you started and where you came from and how you got here and all that, and end up with talking about the realities of what we were facing then and what the realities are facing now and any concerns you have. So, Russ, where did you come from, man? I don't think I even asked you that.
All right. It could be a long story, but
Well, we got an hour, so
I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I am a native of Chicago, Illinois. The South Side, which is the good side. The other side has the Cubs on it. We don't really try to associate with the Cubs. We're White Sox fans in this house. Uh, and I went to school in Colorado, moved around the country with my employment. And at one point, I lived in Pocatello during the late 60s. And I moved on from there, from Pokey to Portland to Seattle to California for 25 years.
God, you went downhill.
I, I did. I did.
Sorry.
My efforts to make more money failed. But anyway, uh, that's my sort of historical background. Uh, as far as my involvement with the Idaho Liberty groups, what happened is we were living in California in the Bay Area. People like Nancy Pelosi were my representatives, and it was hell on earth for me. I just hated it from a political standpoint. And having been in Pocatello, I traveled to Boise quite a bit when I lived there. And I always said to myself, you know, if I have the opportunity, I'm going to move back to Pocatello, or excuse me, move back to Idaho. And it just turned out that way. I sold the company that I was a part owner of uh, and packed up the U-Haul truck and headed northeast. And it was hell on earth, but we made it over Donner Pass in a snowstorm and landed in Star, Idaho. So that's my background. At the same time, there was a presidential election that was starting, and the president that was elected at the time was a gentleman named Barack Obama. And I just was retching at the thought of a guy who said he wants to fundamentally change the culture of this country because this is the greatest country, excuse me, this is the greatest country the world has ever known. And that guy was not going to change it over my dead body. So at the same time, the Tea Party was starting up. And I thought, well, hey, these guys seem to have the right idea. They're presenting a different avenue. We're going to elect conservative Christian type people, and we're going to change Barack Obama's attitude on the country. So I contacted the original starters of the Tea Party, And I volunteered my services, which were to handle the activity section of what Tea Party was doing. The first rally we had down on the Capitol steps through the internet, we had 3,000 people. 3,000 people showed up. We sang American songs. We had a great time. We even had a pig we roasted. And we gave that away. It was an example of, just getting people involved. And they loved it. The city came after us because we didn't have a food license. And it didn't matter. We just did it anyway. Um, and it worked out great. So we, at that point, had 3,000 people in the Ada County or Boise Tea Party. And, I thought to myself, well, this really has an effect. I would call guys like Crapo and Russ Fulcher, and I'd say, this is Russ Smerz with the Tea Party. I'd like to talk to you. And they'd say, sure, Russ, come on down. And I'd go down there, we'd talk, I'd tell them we had 3,000 votes if they agreed with us, and they did. And at that point, other tea parties were starting up around the state of Idaho. Uh, Canyon County, Washington County, Payette, uh, all the counties, Elmore even, Twin Falls. So I thought, why don't we get all these guys together and form just a giant Idaho Tea Party, which we did. And we decided to start a group called the Conservative Leadership Party. It wasn't actually a party, it was just a group. So I was driving, you mentioned earlier in your introduction that we gave our time and money. I was never paid for what I was doing. And I would go to each area, driving all over the state, tell them what we were doing, what we were interested in, and we discovered that we were locally based. In other words, all the tea parties had their own issues. And my suggestion to them was this: look, if your goal is the same as our goal, let's work on it together. And it worked. It did. We had great rallies, we had great meetings. The leadership, all conservatives, I might add, not all necessarily Republicans, but just conservative type people, worked out very well. Excuse me while I blow my nose. I'm about to snot on myself here. Okay, so I'm traveling around the state talking to different tea parties. Got people like Dorothy Moon involved and Dar, who is her husband. And they're up in Custer County or somewhere up there around Stanley or Chalice. They do a great job. We got people up in Washington County who were very active politically, and we would have meetings on a quarterly basis under the conservative leadership group. Worked very well, and then we found out that there were many other groups, gun groups and that type of thing, that wanted to get involved. I don't know if you could see it, but I'm wearing a militia shirt right now, and that was started by a gentleman who recently passed away, Jack Stewart, who was a veteran of World War II in the Navy in the South Pacific. His partner was Craig Campbell, and between the two of them, they started the Ada County militia. There's militias in 12 different counties right now. We think there's around 1,200 different people involved with the different militia. And we're referred to as the Lightfoot militia because we don't have tanks and in mechanized vehicles or airplanes or anything like that. So we had all these groups coming forth to work with us, and then Bob Neugebauer, who is the editor and publisher of the Gem State Patriot, he moved up to McCall or somewhere up there
Blue
like that.
Meadows.
Anyway, totally we had 12,000 people that were subscribing to Bob's Gem State Patriot, and it was great. We still have that publication going out on a monthly basis, and Bob does a great job. That's sort of how it started for me. I just love the country. I had three uncles in World War II. I had a brother in the Korean War. I have two other brothers who were in the U.S. Army, did not go to a battle zone, but they were certainly patriots for joining. Well, the one had to join or go to jail. Um, but he's still a solid citizen. He's a liberal Democrat. I can't believe it. Anyway, uh,
We all have one of those.
yeah, it's like the black the black sheep in the family. Only in my case, that's me. I left Chicago at 18 years old and swore to myself I'd never go back, and didn't, other than visit my mother, and that just worked out real well. My wife Dorothy, her father served on a destroyer in World War II in the Italian uh, zone, Anzio, in that area. All of those people survived, by the way, and they're still around, except for my Army brothers. They passed away, but not from battle wounds or anything like that. Uh, so our family has always been very patriotic, and even being from Chicago, which most people understand is a very liberal Democrat type of area, these guys are solid citizens, and I figured, man, if they could do that, I could do this. And this, in my case, was to work on a public basis to join a group and keep America great again. And so that's the history. I know that was sort of a long story, but that's me.
So what is so again, just for people that might not, that might not be of the same political persuasion as us, because we'll find those. So help them understand what the connection was between those people that had served and your desire to serve in Idaho.
Yes, that's an easy one because they were willing to sacrifice, if necessary, their lives. So am I. And while I'll never go to war, I'm 80 years old. I war with people on a daily basis as far as liberals and conservatives, but that's okay too, and that's what it's about. We have a right to our own opinions. Um, so, from a party standpoint, I'm a registered Republican. From a philosophical active standpoint, I'm far more libertarian than I am Republican, and certainly not Democrat. And I have worked with people like Crapo and Rish and my favorite Russ Fulcher.
Mhm.
Uh, all good guys. We have our differences of opinion, but
Mhm.
that's good. That's the way it should be.
Yeah. So let me backtrack for a minute, just
Yes.
for people that might not be aware of what the Tea Party was. As far as I remember, there was one Tea Party, and then the Tea Party ended up splitting, right? It was Boise Tea Party, and then Boise split off into the Treasure Valley Tea Party. Is that right?
That's correct. And
And so what was so I'd
earlier
like,
in my long diatribe, I mentioned that what we discovered was every Tea Party had their own issues.
mm,
And uh, two things happened. One, it was the Boise Tea Party, and people outside of Boise, outside of Ada County, some of them didn't want to be affiliated with the Boise Tea Party because they thought we were a bunch of libs. They wanted their own issues addressed.
right.
Uh, that being the case, they started their own tea parties. And again, I mentioned Custer County, which is up around Chalice and Stanley, uh, the Moons. Uh, Larry Lundeen, who's up in Washington County, he's a little bit of a whack job. He's the greatest. Um,
You have to be.
yeah, he's terrific. And then we did split off different. We sort of I call them spun off because we didn't do it in anger. We did it out of necessity. Our issue here was fiscal, and all tea parties were based on fiscal responsibilities. Not that we didn't want to pay taxes, but we didn't want to pay taxes that were unwisely used, how
So
the money was being spent.
so Tea Party was tea taxed enough already, right? Is that what that was stood
That's
for?
what the whole
Okay.
that's what the whole deal was. TEA, right? Taxed
Right.
enough already.
Okay.
And we figured we had enough taxes going in, and the way that it was being spent out sucked. We just didn't buy some of the things that they were doing.
Mm,
So, but you could tie fiscal responsibility to almost any issue that you want. Uh, one of the most obvious examples of that was there was money being spent um, for abortions, and we didn't feel that we should be supporting the murder of babies or the preborn. So they tied that. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars going into what's the name of the outfit over there in Ontario? I can't think of it right now, but the the fact of the matter is that this country and this state itself spends millions of dollars on abortions. Uh, that's a
oh,
fiscal
subsidizing Planned Parenthood.
plan. Thank you, Tom. I feel like
Anytime.
like feel like an idiot now. That's okay.
Hey,
Uh,
you're 80.
yeah, I am an idiot. What am
No, you're
like,
80. You're an idiot.
yeah, there you go. Anyway, Planned Parenthood is probably the worst example and best example. And it's the worst example in that it's paying to murder babies. Wrong. But they're spending millions of dollars to do it. So I think a lot of that has been eliminated. And under Trump, I think all of it's going to be eliminated, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Uh, but, up north, and I'm talking way north, like the Heather Scott area, which is close to the Canadian border. I love Heather. She's not only easy on the eyes, she has
Fun to
got it
watch.
down. She is a super patriot. And her issues up there were like roads and streets and stop signs and people destroying the country, too many people. So, I mean, that's how diverse it was from a stop sign to a child murderer. And, and it really gets people's blood boiling when they hear where some of our taxes are being spent. And I'm glad it does. And I'm more than willing to listen to any opinion as to why we should be spending money doing a particular thing, something I might not agree with. For the most part, though, Idahoans are solid. I mean, we think America first, and gosh darn it, that's what the Tea Party and that's what all these liberty groups are about. Liberty means freedom. I'm also a member of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, which um, they are very strong. They're libertarians in nature. Uh, so,
And there are a lot of people that have a hard time. They might have a hard time with you saying that, saying, "Oh, there it is. I knew it." They were, because I got that all the time. No matter where I went traveling the state, people are like, "Well, what do you know about them, and do you like them, and all of that?" So, it's funny how the intent of an organization can be so misconstrued just because of what they think the organization might be doing, or
yes.
you know
And Idaho Freedom Action, Idaho Freedom Foundation is very good at working with legislators. And one of the greatest things about living in Idaho is that we are a citizen legislature. We could talk to our people. We could go down, we could give them a phone call. When Janice McGeehan, maybe not a popular name, but when she was the lieutenant governor here, I called her one day and I says, "Hey, Janice, I want to talk to you about something." It happened to be the fact that she had overridden Brad Little's actions and
I remember
did
that.
it. Yeah, sort of. She says, "Okay, Russ, come on down. We'll have lunch." And we did. And we talked about it. And, I says, "Janice, why did you do this?" And she says, "It's a God thing. I knew it was not right. And I was willing to take the step, speaking for her, as to what she thought was right." Now, I think most of our legislators are like that. They'll take the phone calls, they'll read the emails or personal letters. Personal. And Idaho Freedom Foundation, by the way, works very closely with legislators. Nothing happens in this state that doesn't go through that capital. So when people say the state of Ada, they're really saying the state, the capital, and
Mhm.
and they're right. Um, we have a great system down there. We have great people working there, and these people are getting paid squat for what they do. They're only doing 3 months a year as far as working in the session, but they're working year round.
But
Believe.
everybody I know works year round, right? And what is
Yeah,
it? What's it currently? 17,000, and they were
yeah,
looking for like a 30% pay hike. Somebody got
yeah,
on all over. Mike Moyle. He's supporting this and he's supporting that. I'm like, poor guy. It's like,
exactly. Mike happens to be a neighbor of mine. He lives right down
and
the
and
hill.
part of me is like, if I was in the legislature, a lot of us have to work, right? We have to work multiple jobs because we don't have cushy retirements like you, Russ. I'm kidding. Um,
Right.
but
Well,
but but it's like, if these guys are going to work all year long, shouldn't they be? If what do they say? If a person is worth their toil or whatever, if somebody's going to work hard and they're going to be doing it and they're going to be properly representing you, then shouldn't they be properly accommodated for that type of a representation? Now, you know as well as I do, there are a few legislators that don't have, they can barely rub two dimes together,
absolutely.
right? And
Yeah, and then
so,
the word is compensated, by the way.
yes, yeah, sorry
Yes,
about that.
and well, you helped me with the Planned Parenthood thing. I thought I'd help back.
Okay, here's a reciprocate, right? Appreciate that.
That's okay.
Well, so
So
go ahead.
anyway, yeah, the citizen legislatures that we have
Hmm.
are just wonderful. And I say that for both sides,
Me
both the
too.
Republicans and the Democrats. They're solid people.
Yeah.
And they're willing to listen and do things. They're willing to act on our behalf. And that's just terrific. I love these
I
folks.
testified against the ConCon last year, the Article 5 convention, that comes back every year. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it's like COVID. It just keeps coming back. I'm kidding. Um, And so I was testifying, and one of the
Teresa might not appreciate
I know, right? She
yours.
never did anyway. Um, but one of the Democrats, I was just going off being kind of goofy because I had lost, the verbiage on, uh, you know, the way that you address them, councilwoman and or the, whatever it is. And I was just losing my stuff. I had it all planned, all my talking points and all that. And apparently Alana loved it so much. She's like, I know there's something you're trying to say or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. She's like, I think we ought to give you a little more time.
Good.
But see, what I'm saying there is, you could hate Democrats and you could hate politicians and you could hate all these people, but by doing that, you're isolating yourself, I believe, from truly being effective. And not only that, you start to isolate and shrink your echo chamber to where you are only going to be aligned with people that are not really as interested or goal oriented as you wish to be because you know this, Russ, when we started it was about growing liberty, right? But
Yes.
you look at what's happening now, it's like we're not growing. We're starting to eat our own children, and we're just, people aren't Christian enough, or they're not, active enough, or they're not this, or they're not that. And I feel like we've really lost sight of that. I even had somebody tell me once, Tom, I wouldn't have to move here if guys like you would have been successful at doing what you're supposed to do. And I thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the kind of attitude that I just felt like we didn't really need. And I didn't see that kind of attitude back when we were rabble rousing. Did you?
No, actually, the people, and I don't know if it's anger or what, but they wanted a villain. And the villain at the time that we started the Tea Party was Barack Obama. Has changed the culture of the greatest country that's ever been on the face of this earth. Well, that's pretty villainish. I mean, and it's an easy target.
Mhm.
And that carried out to obviously the president and a lot of the other states. So we had an easy target. I called it low hanging fruit at the time.
Mhm.
So right now, our villain is not Barack Obama.
It's
It's
IFF.
probably,
It's
pardon me?
it's Russ Smerz and IFF.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you.
serious, man. When I say eating our own, I mean it. I mean, we're attacking each other. And
Yeah,
and it's and I've decided to stay as far away from the political realm as possible because not only is that not where I want to be focused on issues, but it just seems like such a cesspool. And I'm sad because I remember us joking around and us being fun, and it was fun to wave the flag. You know what I mean? You're among
yes.
3,000 people, everybody singing American songs. It was our time to shine, man. And
And
it was the beginning of something amazing. And the fact that it's
everybody loves a winner. You know, they called the Dallas Cowboys America's team at one point, and everybody loved them. That's BS. I never loved them. I'm a Chicago Bear fan. I had never loved the Dallas
I
Cowboys,
only
even
like the
though,
cheerleaders.
yeah, the
I mean,
cheerleaders were.
they were hard to beat, I think.
Yeah.
But that's
Anyway, yeah, we're at the point I think now where we have to create another villain or a need, and the villain should not be Donald Trump. I mean, to me, that guy is hitting it out of the park with everything that he's doing. I just love to hear it and see it, and his cabinet is awesome.
well, I'm trying to think about ways to help people understand what's really happening, right? So people will take a position, well, I hate Donald Trump or I love Donald Trump. And to some degree, the people that love Donald Trump believe that he's a king and that he's going to save us, which is really scary to me. But then you have the other people that they can't articulate why they hate the man. And
Right.
so I was watching on TikTok just recently, believe it or not, I signed up for that. But
Okay.
there's a lot of stuff on there. And what you'll learn there is that there are a lot of young kids young little 16, 18-year-old kids, girls. I saw the girl video. She said, I want to admit that I was wrong. And so she showed a picture of her with the anti-Trump, thing, and she was protesting against Donald Trump. And she said, "You know what? I believe the media, and now I don't believe the media anymore. I see what's happening. I'm learning what's happening, and I'm encouraging every one of you to be able to look at this from a different perspective." So, part of it is trying to be able to articulate some of what we're seeing. So, people are looking. If you're on X, you're seeing. I mean, he's exploding it, right? And we're going to name the Gulf of America. Well, why? Well, I'm going to go ahead and send our, the hardened criminals across the border. Well, why? And I can't help but wonder if it would be helpful for us to be able to articulate the reason why he's doing those things so that people can start putting two and two together rather than just this is what we're going to do and the right goes yay and the left goes boo and we've got all this stuff going on. It's like, wait a minute, this is how this works. I mean, there's no mention of like the Walter McCarran Act of 1966, right? Of course it gets a little intellectual, but if we're going to try to educate the public and we're going to try to communicate and we're going to try to grow liberty, part of growing liberty is to be able to reach out beyond our echo chamber, isn't it? Or am I under?
Yes. One of my fears or concerns is when the Tea Party was at its strongest, I mean, just nuts to the wall, just strong. Donald Trump killed it. Now, he didn't intentionally kill it. When he got into office for the first term, people says, okay, it's done. We won. We don't have to worry about it. I used to have Tea Party meetings at local hotels or whatever, and just I'd send out one email, meeting such and such a date and time, and I'd have 300 people show up. When he got in, people said, hey, no problem. He's got it. Let George do it. Well, I'm afraid that will happen again because we do have the same people out there. I mean, people haven't left this state, and fortunately, I'm looking at people coming from what they're now calling cows, California, Oregon, Washington, that have conservative values that are going to revitalize the conservative way of thinking. They're facing it in their own state. I came from the Bay Area in California, as I mentioned, with Nancy Pelosi and Barbara Boxer and those guys. And good grief, that could not have been worse from a political standpoint if you were a conservative, because your vote was absolutely worthless. Nothing would happen. So we do need to focus on what we need to focus on. We have to have people get out and do the work. I probably have in the last 10 to 15 years had 1,000, no exaggeration, phone calls about, Russ, why don't we do this? And I'm going, okay, we means both of us, right? And they say, well, I can't right now. I'm working or I'm going to school or whatever. But we need to get everybody on board. And we need, when people have an idea, they're normally very good ideas. We need to get them involved as well as ourselves. And I'm certainly willing to help with whatever I can. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they're welcome to phone 208-412-2240 or email. It's Russ Smerz, my name, RussSmerz @yahoo.com. I mean, bring him on. I'm willing to do whatever I can do to move
That's
it
awesome.
forward.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, it's good.
So let me ask you a couple questions. So when you were talking about traveling and visiting all of the groups, was that before you established the Leadership Council, or was that the Leadership
Yes,
Council? It
It
was.
was before, and actually it was brought up by the different groups, by the people who were saying, you guys down there in Ada County, you think one way and you run the state really. It should be the state of Ada, as I already mentioned. Uh,
Right.
but they said, why don't we get together on this thing? I said, oh gosh, that's a novel idea. Why do you think I'm here? Why do you think I just drove 400 miles to meet with, 10 people if necessary, or one person if necessary? So, yeah, that was before the leadership council was in existence.
So one of the things that I did as a coordinator was travel a multi-state area. So I found it extremely beneficial. I think it was hugely important to build person-to-person relationships and being a ground troop that way. So when you met these people, what kinds of things did you do with them?
I asked them what their issues were. I listened and then tried to tell them, well, you guys in Custer County are, looking at this, and you guys in Washington County are looking at the same thing.
Yeah,
How about if we get together?
yeah,
Or do you even care what's going on in Custer County?
right.
Uh, and the answer, quite frankly, was yeah. We're all in the same state, and but I think the key word is I listened to people and I tried to get it out through the Jump State Patriot, the newsletter, or in person. Just talk to them, and if they had a good idea, I certainly, and most of them did have good ideas.
Mhm.
When I was running a business, that people would come in and slam the door and swear at me, and I'd say, "Okay, what should we do?"
Mhm.
And normally they had the right idea because they were involved in it.
So we've established that that was a good thing.
Yes.
I can also say that I've had a lot of success too. Whether I actually motivated people or not was really it kind of depended on them individually. And a lot of that was how much they knew, how comfortable they were with confrontation, realizing that you don't necessarily have to be condescending to somebody when you communicate to them, while remaining firm on a particular issue. But what I'd like to ask you, Russ, is if are there other successes that you think that came from the either the Tea Party itself or the Liberty Council, aside from what you've just mentioned?
Are there other? Yeah. I mean, just look at some of the politicians. I think they've done a good job. Even Raul Labrador, who people really fight with a lot as their attorney general. Um, and Raul and I have gone nose to nose on a number of issues. The Planned Parenthood was one of them.
Mm,
That we shouldn't give Planned Parenthood a single penny, let alone millions of dollars.
I don't know even know why that's even a consideration, but anyway.
Yeah, it's I don't think it is anymore. I think that one is pretty much done, a victory.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have to be focused. We have to have the right strategy going in. And talking to people is key, no matter what you're doing. And we have to get their side of the issue. And if we could resolve that, they're in our camp.
Well, I had realized several things, and uh, in the midst of so many, I had to pull out a couple of them. And one of them was this issue with Prop 1. And it was a big deal, right? And it was complicated enough. And of course, I wasn't working with JBS at the time. I had found a job in a completely unrelated field. And what was interesting about the timing of that was it put me in a position where I was no longer on the ground connected to all of the Liberty folks. I was just a regular guy going to work. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym, got home at 7:30 after traffic, and I didn't have time to do much of anything. But one of the things I had found was, aside from understanding people and the people that I knew and their positions, what I found was very few people that took a supporting position or a position of opposition could articulate why they would support it or why they would oppose it. And so I saw this as a really, really huge problem. The other thing that I noticed was a couple of years ago, I don't know, 5 years or more, when the petition went around to impeach Brad Little. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
So, and if I remember right, we needed about 80,000 or 81,000 sign on the petition, and we ended up with 17,000. So we weren't even close. And so I'm as I think about those, I'm like, okay, so we have an information dissemination problem. Maybe people just aren't they don't know where to go to get the information that they need unless you know where to go, right? Um, and then we have a problem with enough people trying to be able to understand the abuses or overreach of Brad Little's position. And I thought, okay, so how are we going to fix those? So I look at those as obstacles. And in moving forward, what I'm trying to do is to be able to find solutions to these problems. And part of that was asking you some of the successes that you'd seen in your, more than 20 years of involvement. Um, what, if you think of any more, let me know. But what obstacles did you have to deal with then? Do you think? And I don't want to use the word failure, but if that happens to come up, we can discuss those too, or shortcomings or something. What kinds of things would you have hoped for that we would have done differently, do you suppose, back then?
Okay, on Prop 1, I really can't address that issue. I'm not sure even where that one went. As far as impeaching Brad Little, that was really a COVID-based issue where he was shutting down what I think they call them non-essential workers.
Hmm.
Non-essential workers like waitresses that are trying to feed their families,
Right.
or bartenders, or people who didn't have direct contact with the certain parts of the public. But I think that one was simply a matter of communication. This is what's happening. This is why it's happening because the governor issued that mandate. But there were states like Florida and South Dakota and a couple of the others that said, we're not going to follow that. That was a
Hex-
Fauci thing.
They didn't even cover Texas when they decided that they weren't going to have any part of it. It's
Right.
like COVID kind of vanished.
Yes. And I'll never forget walking into church one afternoon. I'm at Eagle Christian Church, and I had just heard that afternoon that they had restricted singing in churches in California. And I went up to our pastor and I said, "You know what? I said, I just heard on the news that they're not going to let people sing in church in California." His answer, "Sing louder."
You gotta love pastors like that, right?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I almost screamed the songs out, and I'm a really bad singer. But yeah, and that thing with Brad, I I think he'll run again. But there's another thing going on here that people maybe don't realize in Idaho. This is a good old boy state. There are good old boys like Brad and some of the past governors. Uh, Gee, who would that be? Uh,
Well, Bob
and there
Buchenbauer
are
wrote about
companies,
Kemp Thorne and Otter and all of that, right?
yeah, there are companies that um, pretty much call shots. And, they say money talks, and it's very true in Idaho as well. They spend a lot of money getting their people involved. And that's one of the things that Idaho Freedom Foundation struggles with and fights. So we got to, make sure the good old boys know that we want them on our team.
Well, they appear to be on the run. When you try to communicate with them, they're no, they're nowhere to be found. It's kind of funny. I've told people I got pictures with Butch Otter whenever I saw him,
Right.
and whether he was a good, good old boy or not, which he arguably was, um, he was a likable guy,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
he used to teach at Birch camps, and most people don't know that. So he was a Bircher, right? And people
And
are like calling him liberal and all of that, but he,
he's also a neighbor of mine living here in Star, by the way.
oh, is he really? Let's go visit
Although
him.
we rarely have coffee together.
Right. But he was somebody I really liked, and I could show
Yes,
up in public. Actually,
super
he
likable.
he allowed me to be an MC for him at Patriot Day. What day was it? That was in 2011, Saturday, September 17th, 2011, with Shirley McCaig and Kevin Miller and me.
What are you looking up in heaven for there? You're,
Oh, I had the Constitution Day proclamation up there that Brad Little signed. So I mean Bush Otter signed. Sorry, yeah,
yes.
but yeah, I mean I didn't get those opportunities because I was a jackwagon. I got those opportunities. I believe it's because maybe these people saw something in me that I didn't see in myself at the time, and like them or not, I was extremely humbled by the invitation. Um, but I think it did a lot more than it could have if I would have just screamed "Rabid Rhino," right?
No.
It's kind of like when I was visiting with the cops. If I just would have yelled "blankety blank cops," I mean, it's
Bad
just not
idea,
gonna
John.
it's just not going to advance the cause. And besides, it's not even consistent with most of my thoughts anyway, because early on when I started in the movement, and I don't know if you were this way, but I woke up to something that was really wrong. I had no idea what was wrong, but I just knew it was everybody else's fault but mine.
Right.
It was the cops' fault. It was the corrupt politicians' fault. It was everybody else's fault but mine. And you know what I realized? It took me, I think, till about 5 years ago. I realized, you know what? When you point your finger at somebody, you got three fingers pointing right back at you.
That's
And
right.
so when I talk to people and they're like, "Well, if these corrupt politicians," I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 wait a minute, wait a minute. Where are you? Well, I vote." I'm like, yeah. Do you show up to city council meetings, county commissioner meetings, school board meetings? Whatever legislate. Do you testify? Do you do any? Well, none of that stuff matters. And I thought to myself, I'm realizing that people in the liberty movement love to make excuses about why not to engage.
Right.
Do you think that's true?
Yes, I do. And I fault them for that because it's okay, I gave it to Russ or I gave it to Tom, they're going to take care of it. It takes everybody. And
Democrats show up, and look what happens. They actually if you think about this, if from a fundamental level, right? So we were arguably the reddest state in the union, and which would mean to most people that we were the most right wing organization or the state in the country. But yet, the leftist dynamic ended up wiggling its way in with all kinds of different stuff. The Planned Parenthood thing, the add the words thing, the DEI thing. And now somehow we're still a right wing state, even though we've complied with the United Nations mandates of DEI and sustainable development. And so I can't help but wonder here is another opportunity where we could reach beyond our echo chamber. We could communicate with other people. And I know it sounds utopian, but I want to know why people do what they do. Why is it that you're okay with open borders? Why is it okay that you believe that we should wear three masks? Why is it okay that you believe that you're entitled to the money that I work for? Right?
yes,
And I just don't I see people in the movement to still after they eat their own um attacking other people without even trying to reach out to them. And the more I read about scripture, right? Because I claim to be a person of faith, right? And I'm obviously a work in progress like everybody else. But when I go through and I claim to be this person of faith that adheres to the Bible and all of that, part of that is reading it, and part of it is understanding it and seeing if the actions that you're trying to emulate from what you read is actually consistent with your actions in the political and the public realm. And I'm
Right.
finding
Well,
out they're completely inconsistent, right?
it sort of goes back to where I was talking about listening to people. And that to me, they have the answers. And maybe that listening is just getting a commitment, like you did with me tonight on this Zoom call. Give me a date and a time that's convenient for you. And quite often, that's sales 101.
Yeah.
Quite often, they'll give you the date and the time. And it might be on something else, might be on how do we solve this issue.
Mhm.
And that's, to me, key. You know, people like JBS or any of the Tea Parties, um, they're very good, but sometimes they don't communicate as well as they should. Your New American Magazine, you know, excellent. Not yours, but what was yours? Oh, wait a
I,
minute.
I still
We
get them.
have a
So
commercial
this
here.
one's mine. Plug for the New American Magazine, newamerican.com.
Uh, anyway,
Sorry.
that's loaded with great stuff, but you
It
have to be committed to read it.
it yeah, it's a this particular example is 50 pages every other week.
Right.
And so one of the issues that I had was I started finding out that people through laziness, through illness, through taking care of their families, working 18 jobs to be able to pay the government, and whatever, there was a growing chasm between what an organization creates as a resource for its recipients and the inability for the recipients to accept or acknowledge or have time to partake in what that organization has created. So I'm finding this growing chasm where I'm like, wait a minute, my members weren't even reading their magazines, and if they're not reading their magazines, they're not really keeping themselves informed about what the Birch Society actually had in what they're talking about. And what I started finding out is that people started saying, well, you guys are a national organization. We're going to focus on local. Well, what I found then, even further still, was that what they meant by local was joining the Republican Party.
Mm,
And it was really weird. And every election cycle, everybody sort of everybody hates the Republican Party, right? This because they're neocons and nobody adheres to the platform and blah 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 blah, right? But then every election cycle, what happens? Everybody sucks in, supports the Republican Party. The Republican people get elected, and then what happens after that? They're like, wait a minute, these people that we elected and we worked so hard for, why are they not doing what we want them to do?
right.
And the cycle continues, right?
Yep.
So I I'm pretty frustrated about it. But I had to ask you one other thing. We got about 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left.
Yes, sir.
And the one thing I had with a conversation I had, two things. One of them, I had a conversation with a mayor today, and this goes back to and as basically an example for engagement. I was talking to him about two issues that were relating to taxing the citizens, and I said, how many people have visited with you today, um, or how many people have visited with you about their concern about taxation? And he said, one today, you right now. And I
Who,
thought,
you're talking the mayor of Middleton?
now Caldwell.
Okay, by the way, when you complained about the traffic in Middleton,
Uh-huh.
try Eagle Road someday, pal. You're going to find out what traffic is really about.
It's all subjective, man. When we live out here, we're way more intolerant.
I guess.
So one more thing. So and you and I
Was
think
that a question you just asked me, or are you just making a comment about talking to the mayor?
Maybe I was grandstanding, I guess. I don't know.
A little bit,
Um,
yeah.
But the question, this is a question, and we all know that there are lots of people moving here, thus the traffic, and we all have our suspicions about how conservative they are and whether they are or they're not. Kevin Miller and I go back and forth on that. But I'm one of the common threads that I experience with a lot of them is they have an extreme frustration when they moved from where they came from to here and not knowing how to engage. So if you were to create an organization again that was going to cater to new people, what do you think that what kinds of things do you think you would implement so that these people had the tools that they needed to become involved in our state?
Whoa. Uh, I would have them look into Idaho Freedom Foundation because that actually is a goal of ours
Mhm.
to uh, familiarize new people with us. And they could take it or leave it. I mean, obviously, everybody who knows about Idaho Freedom Foundation doesn't like us. Not everybody, but some of the people. Um, and that's okay. We understand that, but there are a lot of people moving here just to get away from California, Oregon, Washington.
So how would you reach out to, let's say, the new people that have moved here this last year without really knowing who they are? How would you go about making sure that people are aware of this organization?
Well, probably through advertisements in the newspapers, but our newspapers come down on the very liberal side.
Hmm.
Uh, and I don't know that that's going to be effective. So advertisements, even on TV or radio,
Hmm.
say, hey, find out about your local government. Who does represent you and how are they representing you?
Right.
Um, and you don't have to tell them one way or another, whether they're good or bad. Just say they voted this way or that way. One of my issues with the elections on judges is nobody knows what the hell the judges do as far as their records are concerned. Or did they vote conservative? Did they vote liberal? Did they whitewash their hands? Just
Well,
uh,
we've taken care of that so far, haven't we? With
yeah.
the latest launch of the Idaho Bench Project with Senator Tammy Nichols and Brian Ullman, right?
Well, I know about Tammy. I don't know about Brian,
So
but
they
yeah,
started the nonprofit for Idaho Bench Project here. I think it was a month or two ago, and they're still in the early stages of that. So if anybody that's watching this is interested, they might want to go to Idaho Bench Project or contact me. And
that would include me, by the way.
yeah, so that's a new that's another. Those are people I've got to get on to and start talking about them. So, one of my Russ, as we close here, since I got 3 minutes left, and I'm going to
Yes.
grandstand the rest of it and shut you down. I'm kidding. Um, what I want to do as part of the the Idaho Ripple Effect is to become a resource for people to help better broadcast. Um, what is happening in the state. I know that the hardest part is going to be making Idaho Ripple Effect a household name, which IFF has me over a barrel by a mile or 10 miles or 100 miles. Um, but I feel like I'm geared since I've met so many people around the state and I don't know too many people that have traveled and met with people like that was part of the reason why this was created. So, what I would like to do as part of what I'm doing is to be able to help promote the work that other groups are doing. I don't think duplication in that aspect is problematic for anything. As a matter of fact, the work that I'm trying to do, and in part, will be to help promote the work that other people are doing, and help provide all of the resources that are necessary not only for the issues, but if they wanted to connect with a group. And I think you and I have talked about this. I know Bob and I have, where to answer the question that most people have, and that is, how do we get everybody on the same page? And
Right.
I think that I that is where my desire is. We've talked about it. I think you know that. And this is going to be, hopefully, if it works out the way I hope it will, um, depending on the support that we get, obviously is going to determine the success of that. I believe that I can supply all of the resources and interviews with all of the leaders of all the groups that either were active or are active, and better connect people to where they need to go. So,
You know, you mentioned Kevin Miller several times during our conversation here. He is a wonderful asset to getting the message out to people. So, you know, and I think everybody knows, not everybody, but a lot of people know Kevin is 5:80 a.m. in the morning
mhm.
and does a pretty good job of letting people know what's going on.
Are you calling in anymore?
No,
I do.
yeah, he
We're
wanted me to
still
pay. He wanted me to pay for the advertisements with the Tea Party, and I wait a minute. This is a nonpartisan
right,
group.
right, 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 right. Well,
No, I haven't called in quite a while, although we're still friends. He is also a neighbor.
yeah.
He and
Let.
Butch, and actually Brad Little lives just north of me in Emmett.
Mhm.
So
Well, okay, Russ. Do you have anything that you'd like to say before we shut her down?
I'd like
We're,
to thank you for what you're doing, Tom. I think this is a very commendable effort on your part, and I'm sure it will work. But it's going to take a lot of people. You might contact Craig Campbell. Craig has been very instrumental in a number of the groups over the past. Actually, I've been involved for about 15 years, not 20, but and I am 80 years old, so I'm starting to lose it. Uh, I know. I think what you're doing, getting everybody out, getting everybody on the same page is a wonderful thing. I used to say getting everybody to pull on the rope in the same direction.
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, it's funny because I was asked just between you and I, and the fact that nobody else is hearing our conversation. I was asked the other day. It was funny because my head is like, I'm doing all the administrative back end stuff and trying to be able to get it to work right. So I met this lady's like, I'm really interested in supporting you, and so will you meet me for lunch? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to do that. And so she asked me a question, and it stunned me. She said, "So if I were to get involved, what would you have me do?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm not there yet. I'm still focusing on what I'm doing before I can even lay out what I want you to do." So, and I started to realize, a lot of it is to allow people to drive people to provide a platform for people to be able to know where to go and know what to do and understand what the groups do, to be able to try to grow those groups for the people that are interested in guns or health or whatever. And so there really isn't anything that I would need from the those people unless they were going to start, sharing resources, if they wanted to share articles, or if they wanted to be able to run door-to-door campaigns or help me work
right.
on upcoming projects or whatever. But a lot of it really is just trying to be able to create that resource that I think I've probably beat a dead horse in trying to explain it. So um, there are going to be things that I'm working on that I want people to be involved in, but we understand, Russ, that it's very, very difficult to mobilize people even when we know what they need to do. And so the the difficulty there is trying to meet them where they are and trying to guide them where we hope they want to go. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I have had conversations with people at meetings where someone will come up and say, okay, we get it. What do you want me to do?
Mm-hmm.
And if they're involved or they want to get involved like that, boy, take advantage of it. Yes, absolutely. That
Yeah.
we have to have a plan.
Yeah. And I had to write in an effort to be able to meet that need. I think one of my next blog posts is going to be how I got started. And it wasn't necessarily to elevate myself over anybody else, because the way I got started
was honestly was almost identical to the way everybody else got started. But I wanted to be able to lay out some specifics on where I came from, what I didn't know, how I came to know what I know, how to come to exercise what I knew, and recognizing the consequences or the possible consequences that could have happened if I had done something wrong. And I think I was hoping that that might empower or encourage other people to be able to say, okay, well, if Tom Muntz can do it, then I can do it, right?
Yeah, if
It's
that
just a
idiot could
it's
do it.
just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and having the desire to be able to try to right a wrong. If you see something that needs to be addressed, say something,
Right.
right? The feds were brilliant when they said, see something, say something, because that's what we should be doing.
Well, you've got big balls. Most people do not have your size nuts. I mean, you're willing to. Do you remember the first time we met on the Kevin Miller show? We were going to
Yeah.
go outside in the street and have a gunfight.
Yeah, I remember. Russ,
That's,
I'll end up leaving it there, my friend.
Tom, thank you for doing this. I hope it helps and do what you wish.
God bless you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Back at you. Thanks,
All right.
Tom.
See you later, buddy.
Bye bye.
Bye.